I told you I was on your side. I told you I would never hide. So you can put your hand in mine, 'cause I'll be keeping by your side. I'll love you till the stars turn cold, and I'll love you like this ring I hold. Yes, around and round it goes, a circle never knows the end of the line. So you will find with our love, 'cause this love is a band of gold. When the fire's burning and when the embers feel cold. So when I hold you in my arms, I hope you know that this love is a band of gold.
Hello and welcome to the Goldberry Artisans podcast. This is a podcast all about knitting and my love for wool. I am coming to you from the beautiful state of Maine, and my name is Emily, and I am a college student just exploring yarn and knitting. So yeah, normally when it's warmer outside, I like to record outdoors, but it's just getting to that time of the year when it's not really warm enough to hang out outside sitting down for a couple of hours or even 1 hour. So I'd actually recorded an episode last week indoors, and the noise from my lens I struggled with this last year as well, but it was just annoying me way too much. I went to edit it this weekend and I couldn't handle it. So I'm trying a different setup today, which means I'm really far away from the camera. I'm like 4 feet away, so we'll see how this goes. But hopefully the noise factor will not really be a problem. So I'm just glad it was the lens, not my camera, that was making funny noises. So yeah, today I have one project off the needles, 5 projects currently, actually 6, but one of them I can't show you. 6 projects on the needles, and yeah, and I'm gonna talk a little bit at the end about slow fashion, if I can. I know that some people have very strong feelings about slow fashion. I'm not quite one of them, so I'll talk about that towards the end. So let's dive right in. Oh, and I'm wearing this is the Star Shower cowl, I believe by Hilary Callist Smith is the designer's name. And I knit this out of some Cascade Heritage fingering weight yarn. Yeah, it was a super fast, easy knit that I knit over Christmas break one year. A unique construction, like this is the opening. So this part goes in front. So that way you get a little bit more fabric on the front of the cowl without it being super high on the back of your neck, which I like. So it's just a super nice lightweight cowl. I'm thinking of making a couple of these maybe for Christmas gifts this year. I don't have plans for Christmas knitting. I never do. So now we will dive right into the knitting. I have one project off the needles, and I've been working on this, I believe since February is when I started swatching. So it's been like 8 months. No, 10 months. It's been 10 months in the making. It's finally done. This is my Waken Up the Flowers pullover. The pattern is Stonecutter by Michelle Wong, and I knit this out of Quince & Co. Lark, which is their worsted weight base. Oh, I always forget the colorway name. I think it's Frost. But the details are on my Ravelry project page, which will be linked in the show notes, which are at goldberryartisans.com. And I had the knitting done for this like a month or two ago, but I had to wait till I could set aside some time to seam it all up, weave in all the ends, although I'd woven in most of the ends before I blocked the pieces, which was nice. So this sweater was just so much fun to work on. Some complex cables, but the stitch definition from the quince yarn is amazing, and it's so comfortable. When I put it on, after, it was like towards the end of the day, I finished seaming, and I put it on to try it on. I did not want to take it off. It's so comfy. My only problem is that I'd run out of yarn and needed to purchase more, and I could not find the same dye lot, and so there's some striping. It is super obvious right now. I find that it's more obvious under artificial light. In natural lighting, it's hardly even noticeable. But in this artificial lighting, it's very obvious. I've got a lamp in front of me, like pointing straight at it. So that makes me sad. Because other than that, I love everything about this sweater. But I had purchased the most of the yarn through Ravelry D-Stash, and then I ran out, like I said, and I ended up having to buy the yarn directly from Quince. Looking back, what I should have done, because I was just looking at Lark in the Frost colorway that was available to buy on Ravelry D-Stash, which is where I buy a lot of yarn, especially larger quantities. But there was none in the same dye lot, so I just figured I might as well order it from Quince & Co., get the right number of skeins. But what I should have done was just look for that specific dye lot that the rest of the yarn was in, and then told somebody that I would do a swap with them or something if I bought yarn, I would trade it with them. But oh well, I learned my lesson. Don't do heavily cabled projects with just enough yarn. But I would definitely consider doing another Michelle Wong pattern. Not right now, because all of my knitting right now is pretty easy. Since I'm in school, I don't have time to work on anything complicated. But I would most certainly consider knitting another Michelle Wong pattern, particularly in this yarn. I just want all the Quince & Co. sweaters now, because this is amazing. So, yeah, and I mean, I'm not perfect at seaming, but I think it turned out okay enough. So, yeah, if I know some people are intimidated by seamed sweaters. The first few sweaters I made were seamed. I had a couple of pattern books that I had gotten out from the library, and I knit some sweaters from them, and I didn't know that seamless sweaters were a thing. I had no idea. So I dove right in with seamed sweater knitting. Made a couple of horrendous sweaters that I attempted to give to siblings for Christmas. And I definitely learned some lessons on smaller sweaters, like about making sure the armholes are not too tight, and actually doing a gauge swatch, because I had no idea what that was when I was like 13. So I've learned some lessons. So yeah, if you're intimidated by seamed sweaters, maybe try a baby sweater where you can attempt it, do it faster, and then see if it turned out okay, and it's way easier to rip it out because it's a smaller project. Just an idea. That's how I learned how to seam sweaters, was baby sweaters. Oh, and I did want to mention, a lot of people in their Ravelry, well, I don't know if a lot, a couple, in their Ravelry project notes on the Stonecutter pattern, eliminated this diagonal ribbing, or they did it and said that it kind of gave a peplum look, you know, where the bottom flares out a bit, and they didn't really like that. But for me, I haven't found that it really flares out at all, and I just like the nice polished look that it gives. It gives it a different look than most cabled sweaters, and it just makes it look a little bit more modern and elegant while still being a very traditional cable-y sweater. So for all it's worth. And I did go down a needle size from the recommended size in the pattern, and I'm really glad I did. And I actually also knit the sleeves down a size. I don't remember exactly the sizes in the pattern. I think I did the 41-inch bust, maybe? I have it in my project notes on Ravelry. Because whatever size I knit the sweater in, my sleeves, I went down a size. And all of the information for this is in my Ravelry project notes. Let me see. Okay, so I did make the 41-inch size. And then I cast on the sleeves a size down, whatever size that was. And this is the Storm colorway, not Frost. I knit a shawl out of 2 Quince & Co. colorways. You can see it. Out of Storm, and the lighter gray is Frost. So I always get those 2 colors confused because I use them together in this project. So, oh, see, in my notes, when I swatched, I totally knew I was going to need to buy 2 more skeins of yarn, but the issue was that Quince was out of the colorway online, and it took them a while to get it back in stock. I would keep checking, and it would be gone, so finally I signed up to get notified when it was back. So, yeah. So that was my only mishap with the sweater. Otherwise, I love it. And I really like the rolled neck edging, I think. A lot of cabled sweaters and sweaters in general have ribbing around the neck, but in this pattern it's just a rolled edge, which I like. It just adds, again, a nice, simple, more modern touch. And it's not that way on the sleeves. Sometimes some sweaters will have a rolled edge on the neck and on the cuffs of the sleeves and the hem of the sweater. But in this case, it's traditional ribbing on the cuffs and the hem with the rolled edge on top. Which, if you're somebody who doesn't like really tall-necked sweaters, then that's a good option to just do a simple rolled neck instead. Yeah, I am in love with this sweater, and I want to wear it all the time. But I do have to wait a little bit. It's still fairly warm here. We haven't really cooled down for the fall yet, which is unusual for Maine. So I'm kind of waiting till it gets a little bit cooler to wear that more often. So yeah, while I am talking about sweaters, I guess I can move right into this other sweater that I have on the needles. I am calling this my Autumn Frost pullover. The pattern is Telja by Jennifer Steingass, and I am knitting this out of Plotulopi, which is an unspun Icelandic wool. So I'll show you the sleeves. I know these were completed last time. So these are my 2 sleeves. I like that the pattern has you do the sleeves first. I did that for both my Stonecutter sweater and that wasn't in the pattern, but I just knit the sleeves first. And then the pattern called for the sleeves being knit first, which I like to do because then I can do them, I can get them over with, and plus, I don't know, I just like doing that. And it's also helpful to make sure that your gauge is still all good, still all set. And this is the body. You can tell it needs to be blocked to get that bottom edge to keep from flipping up all the time. So it features color work along the cuffs of the sleeves and the hem. It has a rolled edge, a little bit of ribbing, and a little bit of color work. And then it will have color work on the yoke. So I'm actually at the point where there's a little bit of short row shaping for the back, so I will do that, and then I will soon be starting on the yoke. It was one of my goals for 2017. One of my knitting goals was to knit a colorwork sweater, and I do have one that I've knit. I'll put a picture in here where it has a little bit of colorwork at the top. So if this is not done, I'm counting that one. But I did want to experiment with something that had a little bit more of traditional colorwork yoke. And I'm sorry, I do not remember the colorway name for the Plotulopi that I'm using. So yeah, this, and now I don't remember if I talked about it in my last recording or my last actual episode, but I think I talked a little bit about working with the Plotulopi. When I was working on the sleeves, I was knitting them in Magic Loop. Now, if you don't know a lot about Plotulopi or you have not used it, I still don't know that much about it, to be honest. But it is unspun, and so it is extremely easy to break because twisting the fibers adds strength, and there's no twist in this at all. So it does break pretty easily, and I found that on the sleeves that happened to me more often, and it was usually when I was going from one needle to the other. Since I was knitting at Magic Loop, then you have to pull, I would be trying to pull it tight so there was no gap. I didn't end up with a line up the sleeve that where the needles where the needles met. So it happened more often that the yarn would break on the sleeves, which is not a big deal to fix, but it can be kind of a pain to have to keep stopping. But it wasn't really a big deal. But I found that on the sweater, I've had to deal with that way less because I don't have to pull it tight across anywhere. All the stitches fit around the cable of the needle, and so I don't need to tug on it or pull on it to get it to close any gaps or anything. So I haven't hardly had to deal with that at all in the main body section. Knitting color work with Plotulopi can be a bit challenging when I had to use 3 at a time, which you do for a couple of the rounds. Maybe, I think it is just 2 of the rounds down here. You have to use 3 colors at a time because it is so easy to break. I didn't want to break it. And you can see on my wrong side that I left some pretty large loops. I hope you can see it. Can't really get very close, sorry. The purple yarn, I probably left the largest loops. But overall, I think my floats ended up fairly even, which is good. Still have room to stretch them out, and they're fine. So yeah, that is my Autumn Frost pullover. I'm excited to have this to wear. I'm sure it will be a nice, warm, particularly when it gets really cold, it'll be a nice outer layer. Even in the months or the days when it's kind of too warm to really wear a full winter coat, but I wanted a little bit of an extra layer. That's sort of what it's been like the past couple weeks. I want something warm, but I don't want a big coat. So I think this will be a good option for those days, even when spring rolls around, for those in-between days. So yeah, I'm getting close to being done. And I have a couple of ideas for sweaters that I want to make that I might start swatching for soon. Just so that when this one's done, I have another one ready to go. The other project I'm working on that you've seen before, well, this is not the only other project I'm working on. This is one of the only other ones that I've shown before. I don't really have a whole lot to say about these. These are just my travel knitting. These are my Fairyland Below socks. The name comes from the book, The Girl Who... Oh, I'm going to forget the title now. The Girl Who Descended into Fairyland Below. Oh, I don't remember the title of the book. It's the first book in the series is The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making. And in the second book, September, the main character goes to a place called Fairyland Below, which is where everybody's shadows have been going. So, these are the Grand Central socks by Knitting Expat Designs. The yarn is Barocco Socks, 75% superwashable, 25% nylon. The color is 1453. And the white is just some leftover Cascade Heritage. And I knit these toe up, and last time I talked about the toe, but I had the name confused. This is a round toe, not a wedge toe. So it just creates, it's more staggered decreases, like you do a whole bunch and then they get staggered to make a shorter but more round toe, hence the name rounded toe. It makes sense. So since the last time I talked to you guys, I have finished the first one. I did Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off at the top, which is what I have used the few pairs of toe-up socks I've done, just because I know that it's going to be nice and stretchy, and it's just a sock. Like, most of the time, I don't see the cuff of a sock when I'm wearing them, so I'm not super worried about having like a really nice looking bind off, or one that's harder to see or you don't really notice. I just want one that's going to be stretchy enough that I can put them on and not worry about it. And I did a German short row heel, which I did end up with some holes a little bit. That could be just because I don't normally do short row heels, and this is the first time I've ever done a German short row heel. So, but it's turned out fairly well. We'll see how they wear up, see how I like them. I tend to like heel flap and gusset, but I don't want to bother with gusset increases on a toe-up sock because I'm lazy. I find gusset decreases easier because you just decrease until you have the correct number of stitches. For an increase for a toe-up sock, you have to make sure that you're starting the increases in the right spot, that it's far enough to give you time to do all the increases, but also not too close, then you're rushing all the increases. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it that much. So yeah, I just love the easy to knit, but still fun texture that the stitch pattern creates. And I'm at the point where I need to start the heel for the second one. And I didn't try to match up the yarn for one sock to the other because it's not really it does have a pattern, you can tell. Like, I can tell when I really look at this one that there's a striping pattern going on, but it's nothing super obvious, if that makes sense. Because there's variations on with the same colors. It's not always the same over and over again. So I just didn't bother attempting to match it up. And I have 2 new cast-ons since the last time I talked to you guys. This is my Sunset Travels hat. That's my name for it. The pattern is the Gemstone hat by Olya Bulgi. I think that's her last name. I totally didn't say it right. But I cast this on. I went for a quick weekend trip with my dad and a couple of my sisters up to visit family in Canada, and I wanted something that was a little bit more interesting to work on, since I'd just be in the car and wouldn't be trying to read my textbooks while knitting. So this is a bit more pink than it's showing up on the camera. The yarn is Quince & Co. Osprey, which is their Aran White base, and the colorway is Rosa Rugosa. So the cable pattern is actually pretty simple and intuitive once you get going. The hat is a bit smaller than I thought it would be. And not that I actually did a gauge swatch or looked at the measurements of the finished hat. But it might fit somebody who, like, it stretches, but I have issues if hats are too tight, they slide right off my head, and that's annoying. So this may end up being for one of my sisters. But fun to work on it. I haven't worked on it since we came home because I haven't had time to work on anything complicated. But I do hope to pull this out and work on it. It's Aran weight on size 10 needles, which would be, I don't have my I have my little cheat sheet here, my gauge, my whatever it's called, where you can put your knitting needle in it and it will tell you what size it is. So size 10 needles, which would be size 6 millimeters. So it's a pretty fast project to work on. I just love working with Quince & Co yarns, especially in anything that has some sort of texture, because it just pops so well. I definitely want to make another sweater out of Quince & Co and experiment more with making socks. I have one pair that I've knit, but I haven't actually worn them yet. So, we'll see. I do want to make all the things in their yarn. And I did finally break down and buy a color card. I bought a color card for their wool, what they call their core wool line colors. And so it just has all the colors. Look at them. Look at them. Ugh. So gorgeous. Oh my goodness. Because I'm thinking of doing a colorwork sweater out of Quince in the future. So instead of just looking at the colors online, there is a shop about 40 minutes away from me that carries Quince & Co. But I didn't want to have to be standing there forever trying to make decisions and then buy some yarn and come home and not end up liking it. So I just got one of their color cards. And they also have this, which has all of their wool bases: finch, chickadee, lark, osprey, and puffin, which is their fingering through bulky. And then on the back it has the information like what the weight is, the ply, whether it's 4-ply, 3-ply, and then the yardage and weight of all the skeins, which is a helpful reference. So yeah, I just want to knit with all of the Quince & Co yarns. So yeah, moving on to my other new cast on. Someone I know asked if I could make them a pair of fingerless gloves, but not the typical, basically fingerless mitten style that most things that you find, whether patterns, knitting patterns, or in the store, where it just ends like around here, where there's not individual fingers. And that's the kind that I tend to wear most often. I don't think I have a pair sitting here to pull out. But this woman wanted that fingers to go all the way up, like to the bottom of her fingernails, just to keep her hands, to actually keep her fingers themselves warm. And when she said that, I was like, oh, I need a pair like that, like, because I will wear fingerless gloves sometimes, but then I find that I will pull my hands down inside of them to keep them warm. So this winter, I have to do a lot of driving to go into school multiple days a week. So I just might make myself a pair. And she already had the yarn. So the pattern that I'm adapting is the Squares in Squares pattern. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. It has a scarf pattern, a hat pattern, and a glove pattern. I decided it would be easier to adapt a glove pattern than a fingerless glove pattern and have to figure out where all the fingers went. So I just will not do the tips of the fingers. The yarn is Lion Brand Scarfy, which is a bulky weight yarn, and it's just their cream colorway, and it's I always forget, I think it's striping, where there's a section where it's this kind of solid brown, and then there's sections of like heathered or marled with some cream, and then some straight cream sections. So this is where I'm at so far. I just started. I've got to put a few rounds in on the first finger. So I've made a few changes. For one thing, the back of the hand in the pattern has like a pearl square detail that I just decided I would leave out. I wanted these to be really simple. And I went down a needle size. It was originally recommended that you use size 9, but I didn't like the fabric that I was getting, and it just felt too big. So I went down to a size 8, and I did a twisted rib just for a little bit of added interest. And for my cast on, I did the tubular cast on, which is basically invisible. So you actually have it cast on like a knit stitch, like you do cast on like a knit stitch and a purl, then a knit, then a purl, so that it just becomes invisible. Because most cast-ons, there's some sort of bump on the bottom of the first stitch, but for this one, it's basically invisible. And like I often do for projects in the round, I knit the first couple rounds, I didn't join them. I just knit them back and forth. And then I joined them and knit the ribbing, and then I have thumb, and I started the first finger. I'm hoping they fit, but they do have quite a bit of stretch. Like, I struggle with this because my hands, I feel like I mean, my hands are not abnormally small or large, but I do have fairly long fingers for how narrow my palms are. Like, or not, like my fingers are fairly long. So it's sometimes hard to make mittens and gloves for other people. But this, like, it does stretch out quite a bit. So, like, I can pull that, like, 2 inches at least. So, hoping that they will fit okay. If I was going to knit myself a pair, I might go down to a smaller yarn. I probably wouldn't use a bulky yarn, just because I don't knit with bulkier yarns a lot, just in general. Unless it's for other people and I need to knit something quickly. I just enjoy working with fingering weight yarn. That was just sort of a gradual transition that happened over the course of my knitting years so far. I just gradually started using fingering weight yarns. Plus, I love that you can get a pair of socks or a small shawl out of 1 skein of fingering weight yarn, but it takes more skeins of bulky yarn to make one thing. So, as somebody on a budget, that's helpful. In my last project that I'm working on, which I don't even hardly count as really a work in progress, because yeah, it's going to be on the needles forever, is my Cozy Memories blanket. I talked about this a bit in my last one. You can go back and rewatch my last episode if you want to hear me talk about it a little bit more, about the construction of it. But I'm basing this off of the pattern recipe, The Coziest Memory by Kemper Ray, which is free on Ravelry. So since I talked to you last, this is the last square that I had worked on. So I did this whole row that's on top, and then a few more squares here. This is my little double pointed needle cozy that I use just to protect the double pointed needles while they are in my purse. Oh, and I was trying to show you how it worked and lost some stitches. Don't worry, I saved them. So yeah, I'm not going to talk about all the yarns. What I'll do is take a picture of the ones that I've knit since my last episode and put it up on Instagram and tag the different, some of the different indie dyers or yarn companies if they're on Instagram. And you can go back and look at my previous posts for the rest of them. I'll talk about a couple of them, I guess. So this one is sort of like a scrappy square within a scrappy blanket. I know some people will save their little ends to put into a granny stripe blanket, a crochet granny stripe blanket, which is another big thing going around right now. But I didn't feel like doing that. So what I've done is sometimes I'll just start knitting with one little bit, and then I ran out, and then I just added another color, ran out, and added a third color. So just so then I'm really not wasting anything. I'm not left with any little bits, because after this, anything that was left over was like just an inch or 2. So, see, I did it here. I've done it here in this gray and white square. Here. These are 3 different yarns. Yeah, I've done it a few times. I try to space them out so they're not like right next to each other, but yeah, it's just such a fun project, easy to pick up and work on for a little bit. Yeah, that is my Cozy Memories blanket. It's getting bigger and bigger. I love it. It's fun to lay it across my lap now when I'm working on it. I'm going to move my progress keeper while I'm thinking of it, because last time I'd forgotten to move my progress keeper to remind myself where I had stopped, like what was the last square that I had shown on the podcast. So then I had to go back and look at the pictures that I had taken to remind myself which was the last one. There we go. Yeah, it's just such a fun project because I can look back on it and see, like, oh, this square, I knit my mom a pair of socks out of this and she wore them yesterday. Or, oh, I knitted a pair of socks out of this. Or I can remember different people who gave me scraps or did a mini swap with me, and it's just so fun. It really is a good, it goes with the name, Cozy Memories. You know, it's a blanket full of memories, whether it's your own memories from knitting or memories of the people who gave you that kind of yarn. And this is living in my Madder Root bag, a Maine bag maker. My trundle bag. I love it. I talked about it before. It's my favorite. So, that's all the projects that I have been working on. Yeah, now I guess, I don't remember exactly how I started talking about slow fashion when I recorded last week, that I'm now re-recording. I wasn't planning on talking about slow fashion, but it just sort of came, and I figured I might as well talk about it again, and in this episode that's actually going to be put online. As many of you are probably aware, in October, for the past few years, Karen Templar, I don't know how to say her last name, of Fringe Association, the blog and the shop, has started Slow Fashion October, which is an opportunity for people to come together and talk about what slow fashion means for them. It can be kind of similar in some ways to Me Made May, which happens every year online and has a lot of people will take photos of their outfits that incorporate pieces that they themselves have made. And since it's May, it's a lot of sewing because it's not exactly prime time for a ton of knitwear. So, and I've never actually participated in either one of these events. But Slow Fashion October is more about sustainable fashion, and it's more of a reaction to the fast fashion movement, which is just all about cheap clothes that will wear out and get thrown out, so you buy more. Slow fashion is more about making clothes last, making clothes, if you're going to make clothes, creating a wardrobe that fits you, fits your body and your lifestyle and what you want to be wearing. And for some people that means a capsule wardrobe. For some people, what I really liked this year was that both in my feed and in some of the posts that Karen would repost or share in her stories, her Instagram stories, were the people who were talking about how they made their big box fashion retailer clothes last, and how slow fashion doesn't just have to be about buying things from companies that only use fair trade or organic materials or something like that. Because for me, I have never spent a lot, like over $100 on a single item of clothing. I can't even think of something that I've spent over $75 on. Like this sweater probably was the closest that I've come to spending that much money on one item of I'm not at a point in my life where I have the money to buy expensive clothes. I may love a company's ethics, I may love their practices and the materials they use, but I cannot afford to buy their products. I can try to save up for a few key pieces, but the majority of my wardrobe at this point in my life is not going to be from those companies. I'm 21. I turned 22 this month. I'm not, like, I've been the same size for a few years, but when I was younger, I was growing. I was not buying my own clothes. So I'm just starting out on this journey and learning about all of these issues. And sometimes it can seem as if the people who do make very conscious choices, and the people who are really good about buying organic cotton that they sew themselves into clothes, for me, like, I wish that was me. I wish that I could do that, but I can't. I don't have the time or the skills to do that, and I am not at all implying that those people are wasting their time and their money. Because I know that sometimes as knitters you get that, oh wow, you knit, that's so cool, I wish I had time to do that. Almost implying like you're wasting your time or you must not have a lot else going on in your life. So that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just, for me, that's not where I'm at right now. It's like my life goals. Like, I want to be those people. So for me, slow fashion is more about, yes, making things. I love to knit, but right now that's really the only craft that I do. So knitting, clothing, and when I knit, thinking about, okay, maybe instead of, buying 1 or 2 skeins from random places, maybe save up a little bit more money and think about what kind of yarn I want to purchase for a bigger project. But overall, whether it's making clothes or buying them, for me, slow fashion, where I'm at in my journey right now, is about making the clothes that I have last. And when I do buy or make new things, making sure that they are things that I will actually buy. Or not that I will actually buy, making sure that they are things that I will actually wear and use on a regular basis. I have bought many items in the past that were not very expensive that I didn't end up wearing very often and gave them away eventually because I looked at it in the store and thought, oh, that looks so cute. I wish, I would totally wear that, but I don't really. Because sometimes I have like this fantasy Emily in my head who wears a certain kind of clothing and dresses a certain way and has a certain kind of job, but that's totally not today Emily. So trying to dress today Emily, not future Emily. So yeah, just thinking through things more, and it's not just going shopping because I'm bored or because I want something to do. So yeah, like I have several store-bought sweaters that I wear all the time, and I do buy a lot from like thrift stores because it's less money. I'm cheap. That's part of my struggle with learning about slow fashion, is that a lot of the pieces that I wish I could buy and support those people are more expensive. And I completely understand why. I just can't always pay that much. So I do buy a lot secondhand, whether in person or online. And you can find like this top that I'm wearing. It's just like a lace and tailor top that I picked up from Goodwill. Actually, my skirt is from Goodwill today. Like the clothes that I like to wear, I have better luck finding them secondhand than in a big box retail store. But one thing I did like about the Slow Fashion October stuff that I saw online this year was that it was reaching more people who do not create everything that they wear, who do not sew or otherwise make all of their own clothes, because that helps to bring more people into the conversation, where it's about, it's a journey. You're not just suddenly going to wake up one day and make yourself an entire wardrobe. That's just not realistic for most people. So yeah, those are sort of my rambling, incoherent, not really thought through thoughts about slow fashion. Yeah, I'm about to turn 22. I am just starting to learn more about these things, about slow fashion, and yeah, I encourage you to, look through the Slow Fashion October hashtag on Instagram if you haven't already. I didn't really look through the tag a lot this month. I had a lot of people that I already followed who were participating in the different weekly posting challenges and topics, and then Karen would repost some on her Instagram stories, which I enjoyed reading. So yeah, it's just one of those things it's different for everybody. Everyone's at a different place. Everyone has different values and different priorities. So yeah, it's just something that I'm enjoying learning more about. So yeah, that is, I guess I could talk about a few things. Sometimes when I remember at the end of my episodes, I will go through just a few things that are making me happy. Oh man, what have I left downstairs? One thing I just thought of. But I just got, the other day in the mail, Make Volume 1 from Taproot magazine. Now, a lot of you may already be familiar with a lot of people are already familiar with Taproot magazine. I have a few of their magazines. These are two of their magazines that I have. And as it says in their little thing on the back, it's all about food, farm, family, and craft. So they are not knitting specific magazines. They include, it says that they are the magazine for makers, doers, and dreamers. So it includes essays from farmers or woodcutters or or leather workers, and it includes recipes, gardening tips, farming tips, and stories. And there are always a few knitting patterns in them, knitting and crocheting patterns, recipes, different ways. Sometimes some of them will have, like in this episode, in this issue, there's an article called An Herbal First Aid Kit, where she talks about different kinds of herbs that you can use for different ailments and injuries. So it's just so beautifully done, and the editor is from Maine, which makes it even better. But they recently came out with something called Make, which is where they collect a lot of their most popular recipes and crafts and farming essays and tips, as well as some new ones. And I assume since it is called Volume 1 that there will be more. So I had pre-ordered mine. I'm not sure if you can still get one, but you might be able to find one in a local yarn store somewhere. I haven't had much time to really look through a lot of it, but as always, it's beautifully put together, gorgeous photographs, and it looks like a lot of the projects in them are amazing. And it's called a magazine, but it has so much content, and there are no advertisements. They are very committed. They do not want advertisements in the magazine, which means it's just so much less cluttered. Okay, so they do have, you can still purchase it online. It's $18, and it says it will ship 2 to 3 weeks from the date that you purchase it. So it includes things about like how to make hand-dipped beeswax candles, tea-infused lip balm, essential oils for home cleaning, as well as recipes for parsley, like talking about parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme, some different soups, And then some different patterns. There's several by Carrie Bostic Hogue, some sweaters, some other projects. So it's beautiful, and I'm excited to really dive into making some of the things in that volume. I also found a planner at the store the other day, which at first it was like on sale, and I was like, well, of course, there's 2 months left of the year. Like, of course, planners are going to be on sale because they only have 2 months left in them. But this one actually has blank calendar pages. You put in the dates and the months. So the planner that I am currently using goes until June, but I figured it was like $4.50 for this one planner, and it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12. It has 13. Like, we've got spots for 13 months in here. So that's just making me happy. Plus, it's really cute. It's from Brit & Co. And it was at Target. So yeah, that's just making me happy. And it's nice and big. The one I got this year is a little bit smaller. I ordered it online. And, I mean, there were measurements. And I was like, oh yeah, that'll be fine. But it arrived and it's just a bit small. Not enough space to write. So I'm excited to have a nice big planner. Some other things. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. English breakfast tea is like my life. English breakfast tea and Earl Grey tea. Yesterday I was at a baby shower, and a woman from our church was hosting a baby shower for 2 other women in our church who they both recently had a baby within a day of each other. But she had a crepe cake. Oh my goodness. So she basically made a bunch of crepes and put them up on top of each other, but it had like raspberry and lemon in it. Oh my goodness. So delicious. I love crepes in general, but a crepe cake is so good. So good. Yeah, I think looking around, looking for inspiration, but I think that's, oh, I have one more. Oh. I love office chairs. I love spinning around in them. As a little kid, every once in a while, my dad would actually let us go into his office, and we would spin around in his desk chair. I bought this skein of yarn a little while ago. It is gorgeous. Every once in a while, I let myself indulge in a skein of hand-dyed yarn, because most of the time, if I want to buy yarn, I want to get a few more skeins for the amount of money that it costs for one skein of indie dyed yarn. But it's so beautiful that every once in a while I just have to. And I love to support those makers and support their businesses. This is from 6 and 7 Fiber, and the colorway is Arrow. It's on her Amaranth base, which is a 100% non-superwash merino fingering. There are 436 yards and 100 grams in the skein. It has some gorgeous purple tones, some cream, and this a little bit of like a gold, like a light gold, yellowy color in there. Some darker purples, some more pinky tones. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And it's soft. And I love that it's non-superwash. I prefer using non-superwash yarns most of the time just because I like how they feel. So, yeah, it's beautiful. I've been trying to figure out, over the past year, I've collected a few hand-dyed skeins, and I don't really know what I'm going to do with them. Because I haven't used them because I'm like, well, they're so beautiful. I want to make sure that I have like a really good project. But I realized the other day that I apparently gravitate towards the same colors. The same color schemes. I mean, some of them aren't plastic. Sorry if you can hear the crinkling. But I feel like some of them, like these, would actually work well together. So, I don't know. I may make something with them all together. These two are from Once Upon a Corgi. This is her Nose Stuck in a Book colorway from Beauty and the Beast. And this is her This Is My Home colorway. but I love looking at that yarn, that 6 and 7 fiber yarn every once in a while. It's so gorgeous. So yeah, that I guess will wrap it up for what's been making me happy. And I just wanted to say, I forgot to say this at the beginning. Welcome to anyone who is new. I've noticed a few new faces popping up both here on my YouTube channel and on Instagram, which is exciting. So feel free to leave a comment below just telling me, you know, who you are, what you like to make, how you ended up here. Yeah, and thank you to anyone who's a returning viewer. Thank you so much. I love talking to everyone in the comments and discussing different things that stuck out to you from this episode. So feel free to leave a comment. I love chatting with everybody. That's why I started podcasting, was so that I could connect to more knitters. So that is it for today. Maybe I recorded this early enough in the afternoon that maybe I'll actually have time to edit and upload, you know, within a week. So until I see you next time, I hope that you are learning from your mistakes and just making time to have fun creating. Bye.
I told you I was on your side. I told you I would never hide. So you can put your hand in mine, 'cause I'll be keeping by your side.